Hi everyone. We have Aimee Mullins here today. Thanks for coming. Aimee was born with missing fibula bones. That means she had both of her legs amputated below knees. Like imagine yourself, at the age of 1, you lose part of your legs. Like what would you do? Well,
What would you do?
I don't know. I can't do like all the things you have done. But I'll probably do some sports just like you do. But here's just what she achieved. She became a record breaker in Olympic Games, right, in 1960.
96, yeah.
96 was a long time ago.
It was a very long time ago, unfortunately.
And she started modeling, not only modeling, and also collaborating with Alexander McQueen and any other designers, and designing, what is the right word? Designing
Oh, prosthetics.
prosthetics.
Yeah.
And she also became an actress and appeared in many TV movies and TV shows. So one of your TED Talks, you questioned the word disabled. And when you share all the meaning of disabled in dictionary meaning, it all says like helpless, useless, like ragged, lame, like weakened, right?
Yeah, worn out, done
Yeah.
in, done for,
Yeah.
counted out.
That's all what it means, that all like what it says in dictionaries.
Yeah, there was the synonyms
Yeah.
of disabled. It's pretty shocking to see it in print. The idea that you would ever actually use those words to describe any human being, let alone a child. You know, you can imagine doctors saying that to parents, that your child is disabled, and if they were to look up and find any of those words, they would be so much more disheartened than
How
they would
did you
be.
deal with it? Like, what was your first feeling when you faced with all those negative words?
Well, thankfully, I didn't find that until like 6 years ago. That's well past my formative years. And I think, I wasn't being facetious when I asked you, what would you do if the bones, if part of the bones in your legs didn't form, you would still be you would still be Ali, but the circumstances of the fact that in the morning you put on prosthetics before you go to school, it's kind of like if you have to wear contacts or you put in eyeglasses, or, the idea that there's something that you have to do before you can engage in the world to the best of your ability. It's really how it was treated in my household. I wasn't given kind of special dispensation. My parents, both of them worked multiple jobs, and I have 2 younger brothers, and my mother comes from a large family. She has 10 siblings, so they were they expected me to be very
Strong?
self-reliant, which was a wonderful gift, because I wasn't protected from the realities of the fact that people stare, and they often fear what they don't understand. And so you start to learn from a young age how to engage dialogue and how to maybe subvert what people think something is to, make it better for you.
Well, like while you were 4, 5, 6 years old, kids around your age, they were like playing in the playgrounds, in parks, but you were at the hospital all the time and playing with plastic, those cables and everything to build up your leg muscles,
Therapy
right?
bands, yeah, I hate those. No, I mean, I certainly was in and out of the hospital a lot, but I had, I think, I really, the way I regard it, I had like a very typical childhood. I had a roof over my head and food to eat, and I learned to ride a bike with training wheels the way everybody did, and the day that your training wheels come off is as magical as it is for any kid. I mean, it was very, because I've never walked with anything else. I don't really have a great way of describing it other than to try and give you this idea of a parallel. I mean, how many people in this room wear glasses or contact lenses or had surgery to correct your vision? It's probably half of you at least. And that used to be a major disability. And we don't think of it that way anymore. It's like you just get the tool that you need to address it and move on. And in fact, people use contacts to change their eye color if they don't even have the disability of visual impairment.
Yeah,
and
that's correct.
It becomes something that you do to change and make malleable your own image and the image that you present to the world. So the idea of, as a teenager,
What was the most challenging thing for you while you were in teenager? Was it about like those words?
Oh, well, no, being teenager,
Or,
I mean,
like,
it's being a
society?
teenager is horrible for everyone. It's horrible. It's
Horrible for everyone,
it's
not just
horrible
for
for
like
everyone.
disabled person.
But I think that's why, the idea of transformation and escape was very powerful for me. I mean, I was always, as a young child, completely taken and transported by cinema and kind of photographs that echo cinematic escapism. I was very, very good at going away in my head. And you have to be if you're sitting in a hospital bed with full plaster casts on both legs. You have to be very good at being able to transport yourself in your mind and create another reality. And I was good at it. And it's actually something that I have to still work on, because I think it's something that we all do as kids, and then we get lazy. Or also we get told to be realistic, and I think that that's a horrible thing to have as a baseline. I mean, there's some things that it's good to be realistic. There's a lot of things that it's better that you don't be. None of the things that I have been celebrated for in my career thus far have happened because I was realistic. It was because I was wildly improbable in my dreaming, my daydreaming, and the kinds of people. And the other thing is going after people and kind of avoiding the people who say no or say that it's impossible, or just finding people. And I've been so lucky to be able to do that since I was a teenager, to find people who were also active dreamers. They do what they dream. Like someone like Alexander McQueen, or they do. It's not just having an image. It's setting about a way to bring it into reality and create a new reality.
You seem like you find your own voice in a really early age, and you have such a strong, confident voice. Was it hard for you, or was all those dreams, all those imaginaries that you just mentioned, or were they all helped you to find your own voice?
Yeah, I definitely was I think came out with an opinion about things. I was, even the kinds of women that I was drawn to as a little girl were adventurers. They were Amelia Earhart. They were Sally Ride. They were, the cinematic women. It was never Marilyn Monroe kind of vamping it up. It was Elizabeth Taylor playing Cleopatra, also vamping it up, but in a much stronger way. And also just men. I actually didn't even see, when I would have kind of ideas about my own body in my daydreams, I never had prosthetic legs, and I never needed to necessarily even be a woman. Oftentimes I was very much a knight on a horse, going off and charging. It was a very freeing. I didn't realize that until recently, that I didn't even stick to a gender in my imaginations. So definitely I was always generally confident, but I think that's because I've always been curious. If you're curious, you're interested in what you can learn from everybody else. So it's a way that you realize it's the opposite of narcissism.
Yeah, and that keep you alive.
Yeah, because obviously, like, teenage years, those are difficult for everybody. So it's not like you're confident all the time, for sure, and not like you don't have fear and anxiety and self-doubt and insecurity. Those are completely human experiences, and I think if you don't have them, if you don't experience them, I think it's hard to have compassion for other people, because it's such a universal thing to go through. We all, they're just the darker sides of humanity, and I think. We talked earlier about the word inspiration and how...
Yes, I was... Well, we were just talking about before the panel, before the talk, and while I was introducing you, I was trying to not to use the word inspiration, and
You're
she's going to tell you why.
No, but we talked about the fact that it's, there's certain words that get abused, and the real meaning to inspire someone is very beautiful. It has to do with life force, but to infuse energy. You change someone's way of thinking, you change someone's way of feeling. You move someone, something happens cellularly. And that, unfortunately, I think certainly in the American media and in the last 20 years, it's become cheapened.
Yeah. Became like a label that...
Yeah, it became like in the way people use
everything.
Genius and fashion. Not everyone's a genius. It's a very... that's a specific word, and it's abused. And I feel like if something made you feel warm and fuzzy for 5 minutes, you weren't inspired.
Yeah.
It just made you feel good. So I think there is also a very dehumanizing, flattening way that we often look at stories of Anton Corbijn earlier had that image of Stephen Hawking, and this is a genius,
He's genius.
of our time, and people, oftentimes there's a patronizing sense of pity that comes under this umbrella of it's such an inspiring story. And there may actually be elements of it that are, but then I always kind of ask someone, what inspired you? If it's just that if like the fact that I get up in the day and live my life, it's just, I don't find that inspiring. I find that, that I'm just living.
Well, I don't want to use the word, but your whole story is very inspirational.
You're just going to push back on it, I know.
You also work as a modeling, and I was just wondering, do you think that the idea of beautiful, like what is beautiful or like what is normal, is changing during the years? Oh
yeah, just look at the last couple years of imagery. I feel like there's been such an extraordinary change from social media, and the fact that people, it used to be that buckets of geography, religion, race, gender, really had labels that you had to kind of push very hard to break free of. I think that's why we feel the loss of a David Bowie or Prince so much, because people who for 30, 40 years were fluid in how they express themselves, that's an extraordinary thing to do and still be commercially viable, sell records and sell concert tickets. But, with the internet, the fact that people could align with groups of their own choosing, if you grow up in the middle of Kansas and you happen to love Scandinavian death metal, you can really fly your flag with those groups, and I think that's empowered a lot of people, and certainly in the last couple of years we've seen in the United States and in many, many countries in the world, same-sex marriage becoming legal, and we have so many more movies and television shows now with regular characters who are transgender men and women, and this is just in the last 5 years, that we're seeing more of the width and breadth of the diversity of actual society around us. It's not just, there's still the plasticine idea of people who've gone and made themselves look like a doll, but I think we realize because so much of the best writing and acting is on television today, and I think we've seen that people are drawn towards, interesting characters, and I think and if you've had a life that's given you a unique perspective from what maybe 9 out of 10 other people have, we are interested to hear that because you're offering us something that we couldn't experience and wouldn't know about if we weren't invited to engage in that. So yeah, certainly this is something I've seen. I mean that, Jefferson Hack was up here earlier today, and we got to work together on something that was nearly
for the cover of
it's almost
magazine.
2 decades now. It's soon. It's going to be 2 decades. And that was radical then. I mean, in fact, I remember standing in a news agent in New York City, and it had hit the stand. It had come out. It was on the stands.
Do we have that image on our?
We do. Yeah, we have it up here. But I remember standing there, and there was a guy that was sitting in the shop with his girlfriend, and he went and he said, "Dude, look how they photoshopped those legs onto that girl, man." And I was like, "Wow, that's real." But I didn't say anything. I just thought, I was kind of excited that it felt like an interesting subversion and an irony to create an image that became sort of a cyborg for people. It was like this kind of futuristic bionic thing. But today, that's, I feel like that's so much more accepted. The idea that Jefferson thought that was beautiful, and Nick Knight thought that was beautiful, and Lee McQueen thought that was beautiful, and all the people who worked on that shoot. But we were kind of on the fringe then. Whereas 20 years later, I can be on a billboard for L'Oreal, and it's just this, and it's like that is radical, actually, to be able to be on a product that sells lipstick in Bangladesh, and say yes, beauty is genuinely, hopefully, your spirit.
Do you have a serious emotional breakdown, or how do you collect yourself when you have a
How do I collect myself?
Yeah.
I go through it. I allow the breakdown.
So you just.
Not while I'm driving or anything like that, but no, I think that's really. This is one of those things where in the sense of this kind of inspiration porn idea that there's, people that want to, that don't mean to, they end up kind of flattening and dehumanizing what could be a very interesting story content-wise, is this idea of being fearless. I just think that that's not helpful to tell our children to be fearless, because it's a natural thing to feel. I think it's totally okay. If you recognize it, you're able to then move on. Do you know what I'm saying? I think sometimes when you just don't talk about something, you try to pretend you don't have it, it becomes a bigger beast than if you just said, "Wow, that's terrifying me." Like, people think, I've probably done nearly 1,000 speeches in the last 20 years. I'm still frightened.
Why?
When I get up and say it, I just do. I have butterflies. I have nerves. I still have to collect myself. I still have to breathe deeply. I still shake for the first few minutes. And I just find that I'm more excited to recognize those little, the humanity, rather than becoming some kind of automaton who's just going through the motions. I like that each individual thing still produces a response in me. And so I think fear it can be a very powerful informant.
And it seems like you turn into a really powerful thing, being scared, because it's being disabled or disabled person. It's something that make people more uncomfortable, and you turn into an art form, you worked with these designers, like fashion designers, and work on like the idea, the art of body parts,
Yeah, sculpture, wearable sculpture.
body sculptures.
Yeah, I was,
And can we start?
yeah, we could see, I
looking-
think, whatever the first one image up there, I think is very much not sculptural.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I think it's a very early image of me at maybe age 3 or 4 with wooden legs, which is still what most people in the world who use prosthetic legs is the first kind that they get.
How old were you when you were first decided that, you know, you can play with, you can design
Yeah.
your body
I was a
part?
teenager. I was probably 18. I mean, I was aware of Stan Winston building, you know, an articulated knee and ankle for the Terminator. You know, whereas like I don't have ankles that function, and yet you would see pop, you know, RoboCop, all sorts of pop culture things. Yeah, look at those amazing
That's you in 2
non-technology.
years old, right?
Yeah, about 3 with my brother, who's like I think a respectable accountant now, who would die if he knows how many times people have seen him in a diaper. But
And this
yeah, this was just, you know,
what it looks like in like 20
yeah, with a
years.
leather cuff that went up, you know, way up on the thigh. It's like,
Looks scary.
yeah, I mean, and they made an extraordinary, you can imagine how they rust out because you're not supposed to go swimming with
Yeah.
wooden legs. And of course, a child's going to go swimming in a hot day, and I wrecked all these legs. I'm not really sure if I do this right. Oh,
Yeah.
well then that's the running legs, you know, that I think today most people have seen these. This was me 20 years ago, running at Georgetown University. You can imagine it was like the next, you know, FloJo, like, you know, she ran for like the Jamaican, you know, Olympic team. And yet it was really I was the guinea pig on these. We didn't know how they would behave. We didn't know what they would do. And they were, you know, what the impact would be on my knees, my hips. You know, this is me long jumping, setting a world record, and right about to break my tailbone. Like every time I look at that picture, I just do that.
How old were you back then?
19, 20, yeah. And then so this was
This is the cover you were talking
yeah,
about.
so this cover on the
the
left
right.
was a design magazine,
Yeah.
that normally has like, you know, some kind of Apple product on the cover or a chair. And a wonderful graphic designer, Peter Saville, had an article in that magazine, and he gave it to Nick Knight, who brought it to McQueen and Jefferson, and then like 2 months later, I'm flown to London, and we did this cover, which
Was it the same year you have collaborated with Alexander McQueen?
yeah. So I met him at that shoot, and he unrolled originally we wanted to do 3 different pair of prosthetics. We had these incredible hand carved ones in wood, which were at that runway show. I think I have a proper close up. There they are. Those are ash and all hand carved, and
That's special design for the runway show.
yeah. And then there was going to be another pair that was going to be sort of silicone skin, but all studded with Swarovski crystal, which I still plan on doing at some point. And then another pair that were going to be high polished and mirrored chrome, but budgetary restrictions being what they were, we only got to do this one. But this, you know, I got them 7 hours before the start of the runway show,
Wow.
and had to learn how to walk on them.
What was the first thing you think when you were about to start walking in runway?
Okay, so that show was a wooden runway, and it had these discs set into the ground in wood that would spin if you walked on them. There's a very famous end of that show is Shalom Harlow in a white dress and a robot that has 2 spray guns of paint, black and yellow paint, and she's spun around on this disc as the robot paints her. So the disc was there for the big finale, but you had to manage to get around it for the whole show, you know. And I was the first one out, and once I was laced into this corset, which I hadn't been fully laced into until that moment. I didn't realize that I wouldn't be able to look down or move one arm. I was fully locked into it, and my hips were locked. And I panicked, I freaked out. And a wonderful model, Erin O'Connor, was there, and she just helped me. I was like, oh, I don't know how to do this. She just was like, okay, take this hand, stick it on the hip. And then it was like, okay. I remember she had her hand on my lower back. And just having a moment of just thinking, I've done harder things than this. I did the Olympics, I can do this. But being so terrified that I was going to wipe out, to fall. And, you know, many models
but
have...
you didn't.
I didn't. But I thought I might. This was also part of that shoot for Dazed and Confused. So these legs are made in England, actually, down in the south coast of England, and they have they're silicone. They're intrinsically painted silicone, so they've got, you know, again, this is the idea of, like, when I was looking at the Terminator and, you know, movies, RoboCop and all these kind of things. Well, you can also go to Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in London, and you can look at Oprah Winfrey and Jerry Hall, like completely replicated down to the exact color of their, you know, iris, and yet that wooden leg that you saw when I was 3 is what they still give everybody. And I was like, this is just, you know, no. And I realized this is symptomatic of something so much worse, which is that you're supposed to hide yourself. And that was something that I wasn't going to accept, you know. So I knew I had to go find people who had no background in prosthetics, who had no idea what a leg should look like or should do. And so therefore the running leg was modeled after the hind leg of a cheetah, which is the fastest thing in the world that runs. It was like, if I'm trying to be the fastest woman on prosthetics and I don't have to have human legs, why would we try and do a shin and a foot? Yeah. It's silly. Let's try and use that. So, and today it's like, you know, you see these with 3D printing, what they can do. You know, they kids who are, you know, have all their 10 fingers and 10 toes, they don't see this as something to hide or a disability or an idea of being less than. They see it as bionic, as cyborg, as another adaptation of the body you already have. So, you know, they're thinking of attachments that they put on themselves that have a water gun in the arm, or, you know, like kind of a James Bond, Aston Martin of prosthetics with all these kind of Swiss Army tools that come out of it. And it's a really amazing shift to see in just 20 years. These were legs that are made, they're not glass, they look like they're glass. It's actually bowling ball material, optically clear polyurethane. They're very, very heavy. That Matthew Barney made, and they're in the Chicago Museum right now. These were these shoes he had made me that you could cut potatoes. I had to cut a lot of potatoes.
How does that collaboration process starts and goes? Like, do you guys come together and share your ideas about like how it should like, or do you already have a like story behind?
Well, Matthew definitely had a story, but it was he had 3 characters that he wanted me to play. And he actually had that cover of Dazed and Confused. And he had it up on his wall, and he had written me letters, and I was getting a lot of letters from, you know, less than savory characters. And, you know, he basically, it was a friend of a friend, like, he's legitimate, just take, you know, answer his call. And we met, and he had this idea of this character here on the right, which is sort of an homage to the cheetah legs, the sprinting legs. So it was a half woman, half cheetah, and those paws actually were articulated. It actually could bend, and it was like skiing. It was like downhill skiing to balance on that. That took 13 hours of prosthetic makeup to get into that full, 13 hours to get into it and a couple hours to get out of it.
What was it? look? How does it feel
It's all
like to become?
Well, again, I guess I wanted it. I wanted to escape and transform. I wanted to be able to become other people and other creatures, and I think it's incredibly liberating. I mean, the idea that you take something that has a bunch of shoulds and musts and shouldn'ts and kind of baggage around it, emotional baggage, and to be able to just cast that off and say, I'm going to do anything I want in the space between where my leg ends and the ground. Because actually, I mean, I'm really walking on air. My whole association with the ground and my understanding of the ground is in my head. So I imagine what grass feels like. I imagine, this carpet and tile, but I don't know. I mean, I know from my hands. So pushing it so far to the extreme where you're taking on a different animal's feet, and that tail actually moved. You can see the cable coming down from it. There was a guy hiding behind that pillar at the Guggenheim with this little kind of like old school Nintendo control box, and the tail would kind of whip around, and of course it's like when Parker Posey was talking earlier today about costume and how that hair and makeup and costume, how that changes you.
And that's what a person of advice is, right? So you turn into this a beautiful thing to help you transform into different characters, different people.
Yeah, that's one phase of it. But like, for instance, these here that Matthew Barney also designed, they're kind of like, jellyfish sort of. They're just sculptural. There's no functionality whatsoever there. I can't really walk or run in those. They're just aesthetic. And so on one hand, it's definitely me playing, challenging myself and seeing how I feel when I change my legs, because I can change my height. I can change, it changes the way I walk. It, changing the shape of my feet, or having different materials used. But it's also changing the way people interact with me, the way people see me.
How do they see you? What do they say?
Well, I'm saying, there's something about having gone from wearing like those kind of wooden medical legs to black woven carbon fiber. A child reacts differently. One kind of intrinsically, typically made them scared, and the other one attracts them. Because they sense somehow and it's also just energetic, that there's an innate power in claiming autonomy over your physical body and how you design it and how you present it to the world, and deciding that you get to kind of invent and reinvent it, I think is something that we all do. Clothing is a prosthetic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's not natural to us, but it's something that we use to function in the world. This is another character from Cremaster with these legs were, oh sorry, they went the wrong way. They were soil. They're soil with potatoes growing in it, and a nice big fat gold toe that I got to learn how to weave off of. Oops, sorry. I don't know how to do this. Did I just mess this up?
One last image.
I never do this clicker bit. Sorry, guys. Maybe you guys can find that wherever that slide is and put it back up. Sorry. But there's a close-up of that. Again, that these legs were just, they tell a story in and of themselves. And so that, there they go. You create an opportunity for dialogue, like any piece of sculpture. How you feel in the space, how other people feel around you, and creating an object of, sometimes it's an object of beauty, sometimes it's meant to provoke, just thought and emotion.
You actually so many things in your life, and you're still like really young. So, how do you celebrate your life?
How do I celebrate my life? I enjoy good wine,
Wine?
good food.
Wine is always good answer.
Yeah, wine's good. Yeah, no. I am so. I just said it last week to my husband. We're such lucky babies, you know. I mean, we get to come here to sort of to wake up and be in Istanbul. And to get people to, you know, to actually be able to have sort of what started out as quite naive ideas as a teenager, and actually watch them start to spread. And this slide is in here because this is the oldest prosthetic found. It's over 1,000 years old. It's an Egyptian toe, and you can see how with the stitching, it's an articulated toe. So this person wore it with sandals, and it works. And you know, in Hatshepsut, the only female pharaoh of Egypt, in the room in the Cairo Museum, they found this mummy of who they think was her wet nurse, Sitra, who died in her maybe late 50s, early 60s, which was a great old age. And, you know, 5,000 years ago, to live to that, you were like Merlin. And she had a prosthetic toe because of what they think was diabetes. So in this glass sarcophagus, I was standing there. I went around the bottom of it to see the bottom of her feet, and you could see that her prosthetic gold toe, you could see the linen, the fibers, it was worn through. It wasn't ornamental. She wore this big, fat, gold, awesome toe, a prosthetic toe. This is thousands of years ago. This isn't it. For whatever reason, we can't find a photo of this, you know, and I was there 10 years ago before I might have done something surreptitious. But, you know, the idea that throughout time, other people have decided to celebrate their body. These were legs I had made for the Olympics in 2012 with metallic pigment. Actually managed to fuse into the silicone. It's kind of making an interesting color, but it's actually gold. This is an example. This is Frida Kahlo's leg. She was amputated in 1953, and she had her leg designed with a boot attached with little bells on it, and so, you know, and this was her back brace from her accident.
That was in MoMA, right?
I'm sorry?
That was in MoMA, or was it the one appeared in MoMA?
No, this was, I just gave a talk at MoMA about this, about you know, the role of it in fashion, but you know, the fact that she decorated something, again, that was a medical device. This was a back brace that could symbolize the fact that she endured a lot of pain every day. And there is something very psychologically powerful about decorating it and making it yours, and kind of, again, claiming some autonomy on it. This is the next, so those are the cheetah legs, sprinting legs, and then these will be the next generation. This is a bionic sprinting leg. They're not, this is like in beta testing. This is a professor at MIT here, Hugh Herr. He runs the biomechatronics lab, and he's doing really exciting things. These are the legs that he's designed called the biomes.
What was the year?
This is now. This was just, they're doing these now.
Wired cover? Was it for
The wired cover was 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. And but these were the, like, again, now, most prosthetics, when they deliver them to people, have this horrible rubber unisex foot shell on it that's meant to cover up all that. And it's like a mustard yellow is Caucasian, you know, and then you get like a brown shade if it's not Caucasian. And that's the amazing choice you get still. And this, you know, this titanium and the way this bionic foot works, so much more beautiful to have exposed than to cover it up with something that's supposed to look human and therefore make you feel better somehow. Again, I just find it very antiquated. And I know that when you see children now who, for whatever reason, need to get a prosthetic, they are automatically decorating their arm or their leg with, this little girl that thought it was High School Musical 3. She loved Zac Efron and had photos of, like, pictures of his face all over her leg. She's 5, 6 years old. So, or the Frozen character, they get these things, and it does change how their friends, I think about something that might have once meant a heavy, emotionally draining medical device that is supposed to be hidden away, to an object of beauty or interest, and something that can actually liberate other facets of your personality.
Do you have any more dreams to fulfill?
Loads.
Like what?
I'm not going to tell you. It's like hubris. No. That's for me. No.
Okay,
You'll find out. You'll do it. We'll come back. We'll come back in 20 years. We'll do it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Promise?
Yeah.
Okay. What about your bucket list?
My bucket list?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I don't think you start thinking about your bucket list until later, right? Hopefully later. But, I mean, that just gets added to. The truth is I'm living the life that I want to live, like now. That was always very important to me.
Yeah.
To try and not think about things I want to do later, but figure out how I can start doing them now. And for the most part, I am actually. I have no regrets and no kind of big wishes that I'm not already chipping away at.
About your, like, in daily life, what is, like, something minor thing that, contributes to your happiness?
My daily life. I love to cook. I think that's very grounding. I love to kind of go to a market and see what's fresh and come home and cook and watch films, and I much prefer to have friends to the house and cook together, or go to someone's house, especially in New York City. That's a luxury, It's a luxury to be able to dine in someone's domicile, and that I find is a daily blessing.
We have 3 more minutes left for Q&A. Yes.
Hi, Ms. Mullins. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi.
I just want to, I have a quote from Mr. Corbijn, actually. He was interviewed for the Talks magazine, where he said, a photo doesn't need to be perfect in order to be fantastic, something along that lines. Do you see yourself as a visionary alongside Mr. Corbijn as the antithesis of what we consider perfection?
Well, I know I'm not
Our
perfect.
obsession with perfection.
No, our obsession with perfection. I've just tried to. I've never had a prescription for the way to live life, and certainly my experiences designing my body and playing with wearable sculpture, it's not for everyone. I mean, there's other people who do prefer greater discretion, and I don't judge that. I think everybody's, again, I think it's about being autonomous. So if that makes you happy, then that's great. I certainly, like I said, it's not a prescription. However, what I have tried to do is just be truthful as I've gone along and share the ideas I'm having and what I've learned along the way. I mean, this one image, the image that was the second image of, if I can find it, it's like a black and white image. That was the second one. Ali, maybe you could find it.
Yeah,
It was
sure.
it was in Sports Illustrated, and it was taken by a doctor, a man who was actually a medical doctor who in his 60s retired because his love was photography. No, keep going back. Yeah, it's that one. Yeah, Howard Schatz is his name, and he did a book on athletes, and everybody in the book, all the men wore black kind of shorts, and all the women wore these black trunks with the black sports bra because black kind of negates contour, and so he didn't want it to be sexualized. The fact that, but it was about the human body and how incredible it truly is and how it works. So he did a studio portrait of all of us, and then he did one of us. The one of me running on the beach is also him, which looks like it's tropical paradise, but it's Coney Island in December. You should know that. It's horrible. And when this was up, I was president at the time of the Women's Sports Foundation in the United States, which is a huge honor. You're kind of voted by all of your women to be the voice for female athletes. And there was commentary, basically on the internet, that this image was too sexy, and that it should be, I wasn't being lauded for my athletic accomplishments or for my intellect, but basically for having a nice body, and it was on display. And it was at that moment that something codified that I had never had even known before. But I realized I worked hard for that body, and it worked for me. That body worked hard for me, and I'm really happy that there's images to capture that point in my life. And also, I did feel sexy, but it wasn't for someone else. I felt powerful. I felt in shape. I felt healthy, well, strong, capable, all things that, yes, you're really lucky if you have someone photograph you at a moment in your life when all those things are happening. And I remember it coming out like a poem that I had worked on for a long time, but I hadn't. It was just this knowledge that, yes, it is sexy. And, the fact that I had gone from very recently, before this photo was taken, people who would say things, well-meaning people who would say things like, "You're very beautiful. You don't, you'd be so beautiful except for your legs. You'd be really beautiful. It's such a shame." And it sounds shocking, but that's really certainly of people of a certain generation. That's completely how they would think. And I spent many years figuring out how to elegantly deal with that. And then to think the fact that, this photograph could run in Sports Illustrated and there could be a brouhaha of it being too sexy of an image, rather than it being, again, "Oh, that's so great, good for her, how inspiring," that it could be kind of threatening. That was interesting to me. And that's when I thought, yeah, it is sexy, and I own it. And it's I think so. It's not. I don't know what to do with your word visionary, other than to say it's just that I've tried to be. This is a work in progress. I'm a work in progress. My career is a work in progress, and as I'm going more into acting and not so much even the art house stuff, but very commercial, Netflix TV show kind of things where I'm playing like a woman, a scientist, a mom, whatever it is. In other words, it has nothing to do with having prosthetic legs. I will continue to share what I find out, about experiences. So I hope, like Anton, to be able to look back with that many decades and say, and be able to even mine my own archive and say, oh yeah, I didn't even realize at that point that maybe I was doing that. And if I can do that, then I'll have been very lucky.
I'll take one final question, if you want me. Well, I think we covered it very well.
Yeah. Let's go. Oh,
Here's one.
Just when you thought.
Hello.
Hi.
Just one question. Like you, at the end, you were very successful. And you achieved all your dreams until now. So what's the difference between someone that can achieve these dreams or something that you really did to achieve these dreams in comparison that you hadn't? I don't know.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
What attitude do you think you really had to make your dreams come true?
Well, it's not. it's, I'll tell you, I believe that you make your own luck. You work, and you ask for help. None of this happens alone. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. I have asked for help every stage, and not even really knowing how I was going to do it, how I was going to get there. And at every stage, people want to help someone achieve their dream. And that is true, I think, across the globe. You just have to keep, you're going to get a lot of no's, but you will find people who will say yes. And those kinds of collectives and communities are why the world changes in positive ways. It's dreamers who are also doers.
Thanks so much for coming. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
your sharing your story.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you.